Number one is a hard time in the making. Don't give a damn. What else? I am the man in the making.
BCS Countdown coming up, bottom of the hour. Jesse and David, Kirk Herbstreit will join us.
Iowa State fans thought they were going to be happy. One-loss teams now just passing them off.
You know, they call it, when you do something like that, they call it trolling. You know, watching where Ohio State is. 8:30 from tonight. The debate might reach a boiling point, but the issue will be settled. Glad to have you with us on BCS Countdown. We'll unveil the standings in just a second. Jesse Palmer, David Pollack here. Kirk Herbstreit's going to join us in just a little bit. All right, we saw one little bit of change. Oregon came out flat, got knocked flat by Stanford. What's your biggest takeaway?
I think the national championship picture has become a lot clearer. For the last couple of weeks, we've been debating who should be number 2. Should it be Oregon? Should it be Florida State? Now that Oregon lost on Thursday to Stanford, it appears as though if Alabama and Florida State just went out, they're playing in the BCS national championship game, regardless of what happens with Baylor or Ohio State. Obviously, a lot of football still to be played. I think Alabama has the tougher road than Florida State, but at least today, it seems as though the BCS national championship picture is pretty clear.
You put that nice. They lost to Stanford. I thought they got dump trucked. That was
donkey stomp.
Absolutely embarrassing. But you know what, though? Baylor Bears. And we've talked about them a little bit, and people kind of think they're a little bit of a novelty. How about they scored 3 points in the first quarter, and they were still right in the ball game because of their defense. They played great. It's a fun offense. It's explosive. A big win against Bob Stoops. Game Bob.
It hasn't been big game, not necessarily for Oklahoma. They've had some disappointing moments. They've been in the top 10 of the BCS. Kirk Herbstreit's with us. Kirk, what's your biggest takeaway from this past week?
Well, Reese, I think a lot of us wanted to see if Alabama was, in fact, as good as we thought they were. And they delivered. It was a big opportunity at a big stage, and they took on a great opponent in LSU and pulled away in a dominating fashion in the second half, and I think justified that ranking of what they had last week at number 1. We'll see tonight if they still, what you would think, would hold on to number 1. But I think that's the thing. We wanted to see how much they'd improve from the Texas A&M game defensively to this past week, and I thought they stepped up. And an unrelated story, is Miles Jack just a freak of nature, the true freshman linebacker who played some running back last night from UCLA? That's another thing I think a lot of us took away from the weekend.
Well, he was terrific. Got a helmet sticker on college football final despite his late night exploits. There is no greater prize in all of college football, David.
Nope.
BCS standings brought to you by Tostitos. George is back in the mix.
I explained on the analysis of Alabama, LSU, what happened to all of those that the OMSR covered.
UCF leads the American. Has an automatic bid.
Good stuff, but servers.
Because we haven't seen the other 2 undefeated teams.
How about Arizona State right now at the lead in the Pac-12 South?
Almost like we're serving the servers. They don't serve us so much.
They've won a couple games in a row now.
Stupid.
Arizona State jumping 3 spots.
When you look at 11 through 15, Fresno State, Northern Illinois, the other 2 undefeated teams, not in automatic qualifying conferences. Now, they're ahead of UCF, which leads the American, which would put them in position to go to a BCS game. And Fresno State is just 2 spots away from getting in automatically.
Right on.
Despite the fact neither team has done anything remotely as good as what UCF has done this year.
So you think about that, and you think about a team like UCLA that lost their 2 losses were to Stanford and Oregon, pretty good teams that would have housed Fresno and Northern Illinois, but yet they're still going to be creeping up there for a BCS bowl.
Time for the top 10 of the latest BCS standings, brought to you by Discover Card. As is our custom, no false drama here. You know Alabama's 1 and Florida State is 2. And at the bottom of the top 10, South Carolina is up a couple of spots. Missouri might be able to quibble with being ranked this low, but if the Tigers win their games, they'll move up. Clemson is sitting at number 8. Making a move up a couple of spots this week, the Auburn Tigers. Now, Auburn at the moment is sitting 1 spot behind Oregon, which tumbles from 3 to 6 after losing to Stanford. But considering Auburn has Georgia in front of it, Alabama in front of it, and then if they win those games, the SEC championship game, hard to imagine if the Tigers win out, they wouldn't be the highest ranked 1-loss team. Now, here's where some of the controversy could start at number 5. Checking in at number 5, one of the 4 undefeated teams in major conferences, the Baylor Bears. To win over Oklahoma, not enough to vault them past a 1-loss team in Stanford. The Cardinal riding the wave after beating Oregon. And now Stanford is the highest-ranked 1-loss team. They're sitting there 5 in both polls. Baylor, with the schedule it has an opportunity to improve their computer rankings. Oklahoma State, Texas still left. Both ranked. Opportunity for the Bears to move up. And that leaves at number 3, the Ohio State University. Still haven't lost under Urban Meyer, but still with a...
What the hell was Paul talking about earlier? 1-loss team.
So the Buckeyes are left to hope that one of these 2 teams in front of it will lose, and that nobody can come from behind and leapfrog them. But still, the question at the moment, sizable gap between Alabama and Florida State and the rest of the field. Kirk, in your judgment, is that as it should be?
Yeah, I think so. I think Alabama and Florida State have separated themselves with what happened this past weekend. They're the 2 top teams. Doesn't mean they're going to run the table. Doesn't mean they're going to end up in it. But as Jesse said earlier, they're the 2 teams, the only 2 teams that can say they control their own destiny. The interesting thing, Reese, as you said, 3, 4, and 5. As it sits right now, I think it's fair to look at that. You're splitting hairs there with Stanford and Baylor when you look at the schedule. It seems that Baylor will eventually go by Stanford just because of the games that they're going to pick up. But Ohio State is sitting there at 3, and I think for the Buckeyes, the big thing for them will be because of the schedule that they play. They have to win and continue to dominate to not give the voters any wiggle room of giving a team like Stanford or Baylor a chance to catch up to them.
The last couple of weeks, you guys have said you thought maybe the best football, most entertaining football in the championship game, in your judgment, would be Alabama and Florida State. Do you think that those 2 teams have separated by a significant margin from the rest of the teams in the country?
I do, both subjectively and objectively, especially with Alabama. You take a look at their wins right now, like those big words, by the way.
Subjective, objective.
There you go, confusing myself. But big wins for Alabama already this year, guys, and they won at Texas A&M. They shut out Ole Miss. They just beat LSU by 3 touchdowns. That's impressive. I think Alabama's offense over the last 6 games has been one of the most explosive in the country, and their defense is still dominant. When I look at Florida State, not the same resume as in Alabama, but Florida State still has, in my opinion, the statement win of the year when they went on the road at number 5 Clemson and won 52-14. When I look at Florida State, guys, I don't see any weaknesses. On offense, running or throwing, on defense, stopping the run, rushing the passer. They are a complete football team. So to me, I would agree with Alabama and Florida State having that sizable gap above anybody else.
I think they're the only 2 teams in the country that can play their C games against most opponents and still dominate. And I think it's because of their balance on offense and their defense and their special teams. I don't think they have a weakness. I think you could point to other teams that are in the mix and say this could be probably one of their weaknesses. Florida State, they continue to impress. And I tell you what, when you start looking at Florida State and Alabama's defense and you start comparing them, they're built similar, but in the back end, I think Florida State's secondary is better than Alabama's. So I think that they're afforded the right to blitz more. Joyner in the back end is one of the best players in the country, period. So I think you start stacking those 2 teams up, I think you'd look at a heck of a championship game.
I'll do